Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the All in Crypto podcast. I am your host, Rupert, and today I'm delighted to be joined by a familiar face. We have Brandon, the HBAR Bull, on the show. Once again, it's the first time in 2025, and we're going to get into what we're excited about, I'm sure, towards the latter half of the video. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, it's clearly the beginning of a bull market here in crypto, especially in alts. We were seeing the run up in Bitcoin last year, but alts are starting to catch their bid. And I think some people are surprised at some of the alts that are actually getting the wind in their sails. And Hedera, some of the other utility tokens are getting that bid, and we've seen a really good run to this point. So I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I share that optimism with you, and I want to kind of start broadly on what's going on in the space, some of your thoughts on it all. I like where you've just taken that though, because I think Hedera, certainly for people like me and you that are interested in it, was certainly on our radar. But actually, with some of the price movement that we saw in November, with what the likes of perhaps Eric Balanchunas was saying in regards to James Seyfarth's proposed kind of ETF path, Litecoin, we know they just had their 19B filing. And then they actually put Hedera, which I think wasn't on many people's bingo cards in regards to being the next in line. I think Hedera, with this price movement, it's kind of sprung onto everybody's radars and they're going, hang on, what is this? That's where we want them, because me and you both know the second you start looking into Hedera, it's game over.
It's the rabbit holes. You just dive down those rabbit holes, and that's what's nice about these bull markets. You triple, quadruple the amount of people that come into your ecosystem, and it's a completely clean slate for them. So for you and me, Hedera and everything that they've been doing during the bear market, it's old hat. We already knew about it, but for them, it's brand new, so that you get that fresh excitement that we had years ago.
I think you've only got to do a little bit of digging, and you're going to be sold on this. I went for a similar thing myself with being in the crypto space a long time. Coming on Hedera, I was like, okay, well, I've just found the philosopher's stone. I've just found what perhaps I was looking for. So very, very excited. And what do you think about everything going on right now? Obviously, we've got Trump, his inauguration yesterday. How are you viewing? It's a loaded question. The kind of crypto environment right now. What are your takeaways from everything going on?
Well, compared to where we've been, I think it's going to be 10 times better. I mean, what kind of cover do you need to create something within the crypto space more so than the president himself creating a meme coin? Now, I don't know if that's the best way to go. If they use the proceeds in a good way, and who knows what they're actually going to do with the proceeds, I think it actually could be a big positive. Like if they used it to support, some of the victims out in LA or in Hawaii or in North Carolina or any other good cause. One of my favorites is St. Jude's. They
Yep.
could use those proceeds in so many good ways. Now, if they don't, oh no, but at least then the Trump family is getting a position pretty quickly in crypto. I'm not sure if that's because they know what's coming, but I think that things are going to go pretty well for us here in the months and years to come.
Yeah, certainly excited. It does seem like a far more flourishing environment that we've got ahead of us. Obviously, certainly the old SEC chair, Gary Gensler, is no more, and we're expecting Paul Atkins. Mark, of course, is stepping in for the time being. He's actually been very against what Gensler has the war that Gensler has reigned on the cryptocurrency space, but it does seem like we've got a very positive environment ahead of us. And really, when it comes to Hedera, you're my go-to guy for information. Now, I want to address, to perhaps start the video off, what I think is on a lot of people's minds, and that's with the hype around American-based cryptocurrencies and how Hedera very much is perhaps the pinnacle of that. Now, a lot of people throwing in other cryptocurrencies, but there's a lot of links that Hedera has to the United States. I'm sure we're going to get into some of them. I know you told me off camera about obviously Mance and what his role within the United States perhaps was. But let's maybe just address that on a kind of big view basis. Hedera Hashgraph, is it an American-based crypto that's likely going to benefit from Donald Trump doing something with US-based projects?
Well, I wouldn't say it's US based. I would say it's US founded, right? So the two founders of Hedera, the inventor of Hashgraph, to start off, one of the two founders, Lehman Baird, he's a former USAFA professor. That's the United States Air Force Academy. He was an officer in the Air Force and retired. So, I mean, he spent a couple decades, doing work in the U.S. government. Mance, the exact same thing. He was a professor at USAFA as well. So those ties, you don't get much tighter ties to the United States than that. And in addition, I mean, some of the other stuff, their resumes are amazing. Mance, this is what we were talking about before, is he ran the U.S. war games. So the computer war games of simulations, they were into machine learning and all that kind of stuff of, how would a nuclear interaction with, Russia or, our adversaries, how would all that stuff go down? And he ran that in the 90s for an extended period of time.
Wow.
So you don't get, exactly, you don't get much more impressive than that. And then I think they are also fantastic representatives. We have a lot of great representatives in the space broadly, but at something like the crypto ball, I know you covered that recently. Mance was there shaking hands with David Sachs. He's the perfect person to explain exactly what Hedera is doing. And I think that somebody like David Sachs, Generation X, he's not a boomer. I think he's a Generation X, but Hedera is going to resonate with people like that. And when you have somebody like Mance that can lay out exactly what Hedera is doing, what the vision is, how they've set up the council, things like that, you're going to strike a chord with somebody like David Sachs. And that's what we're going to be dealing with going forward as our industry just generally matures. You have to say, I mean, the core part of Hedera is the governing council, right? That's the governance. And it's spread throughout the entire world. We have every continent represented except for Antarctica. We have, almost every industry you could think of. I think they've hit their 7 main verticals at this point, but it is technically, legally, an entity out of the United States. I think it's an LLC out of Delaware. So, you don't get much more American than that. Now, at any time, people say, well, this isn't, decentralized, it's the United States. Well, at any point, they can pull the ripcord and become completely permissionless and not have to worry about things like pressure from governments and things like that, or at least no more so than any other cryptocurrency. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be necessary. And as we're on our path to decentralization for Hedera, it doesn't seem like we're going to have to worry about things like that. So if you are going to pick a cryptocurrency that is a US based and goes along with that narrative, Hedera and HBAR has to be towards the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the governing council members, a lot of them are America's biggest companies. On top of that, if you look at, obviously I think in our last interview we spoke about Brian Brooks and how at one point he was potentially a candidate for the SEC chair, and actually, he's on the board of Hedera, or is he on the board of the foundation? He's one of the two.
The HBAR Foundation, now the Hedera Foundation. I believe he's still on the board. We were thinking he was going to have to leave if he took a role like that, but as of right now, the last I heard, he's still in that role. But we attract people like that, serious people that are trying to do serious things, and we have this U.S. coin narrative. We also have the utility token narrative, which is doing very well. We have AI. We have the ETF narrative for this year. Which are going to be the first tokens that are going to be able to get an ETF. And it seems like it doesn't matter if it's this AI, if it's utility tokens, if it's the US tokens. It seems like Hedera is just really well positioned in every single one of these things that you'd want to be in for the conversation in 2025.
Yeah, it's just a juggernaut. And that's the thing, back to our comment at the start, with this sort of surge in interest, people have only got to stumble upon this and they'll go, oh, wow. There's just so much going on in all these different areas with all these different entities. I mean, the list is just truly endless on reasons to be bullish on Hedera Hashgraph as a project. Kind of detaching it from price a little bit, talking about how impactful this technology is. And if you look at the largest companies in the world today, certainly as it relates to the internet and tech more broadly, come out of America and have actually been promoted by America to maintain that kind of global technological dominance. You're going to see the same thing happen with crypto. And just like you've got your Googles, your whoever it may be that really came out of America, your Facebooks, Amazons, whatever it may be, we're on a similar path as it relates to crypto. There's going to be the biggest sort of projects are likely going to go on that similar path that the likes of Google, the likes of these companies have gone on, and be backed by America. And I think Hedera, like you say, is kind of front and center in all of this. Do we know of projects right now? We can mention Drop and what they're doing with the Federal Reserve or whatever it may be. Do we know of projects right now built on Hedera that are actually being used within the US or trialing proof of concepts or whatever it may be. I think that might be an interesting path to go down.
Well, I think payments is one of my favorites. So you talked about Drop. Of course, they were featured by the Federal Reserve. What was it? That was about almost 2 years ago
A
at
while
this
ago, yeah.
point. So it's been a while. But you're talking about those massive U.S. companies. Google, of course, is on the Hedera Governing Council. But something that just hit me by surprise was the news that came out in the AI space around Equity Lab and what they're doing with NVIDIA and Intel. At first I saw that, and for some reason I really didn't pay attention to it. And Rob Allen, he kind of grabbed me by the ears. He's like, "Are you paying attention to what's happening here? This needs to be, number one on our list for things that happened in 24." Of course, it came out right at the end of 2024, but Equity Lab, which actually had another project on Hedera to try to address fake news and things along those lines called the Starling Project, they have worked with NVIDIA and Intel to embed firmware to address AI issues on provenance of data and things like that right into their chips. Just
Huge,
think about that for a second.
huge.
So, NVIDIA is, of course, the biggest company in the hottest sector in the world, AI. They're a $3.3 trillion company, and they're embedding Hedera technology directly into their chips. Like that, it's mind blowing on a lot of different levels that they've identified this as an issue, that they've decided that blockchain and DLT technology is a way to address it. Then they picked Hedera, and once you've gotten to the point where you've picked Hedera for one thing, they've got to be, every time they're looking at a solution that might require a distributed ledger, they're going to be going back to Hedera. And who knows what the scale of something like this is going to be. Of course, if AI absolutely takes off, well, it is already taking off, but how many of these chips are going to have this, and when will we see that switch flip, and all of those transactions starting to hit the Hedera network? And then what else are they going to solve with it? Is it going to be rewarding the people that are supplying the data into those large language models? Are they going to be compensated somehow? And the only way you're really going to be able to do that at the scale that's necessary is with an ultra efficient DLT technology like Hedera. So how far is this going to go? Gosh knows. But the fact that we have entities like Intel and NVIDIA using Hedera on this kind of a scale is just mind blowing. And it just kind of flew under the radar. I know you were aware of it, but these are the kind of things when we talk about going down the rabbit hole, that as we bring new people into the Hedera ecosystem, whether that's buying HBAR directly, whether that's somebody building something, whether that's somebody buying the ETF that hopefully will come out later this year, they start to do the research. A lot of times people buy first and they do the research second, but then they're going to fall into all these other things that we're talking about, completely going to have their minds blown.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. It's like a tinderbox, Hedera. It's just going to take for one of those sparks, and where that spark might come from. There's so many. We're covering one with Nvidia and Intel and what's going on there with Equity Labs, but we're just waiting for that spark, and you ultimately then see hundreds of millions of users. Potentially, or certainly millions of transactions, multi-millions of transactions come into the network, and the network start to take the role of what it was designed to be. And it's in all these sectors. You mentioned Drop there. They're obviously in the sort of payment sector, and they were featured on the, I think it was FedNow website. And then we have AI. We have so much going on in so many different areas. It's often hard to keep up with. Let's talk about a recent interview that you did. And firstly, massive congratulations. It was an amazing interview that you did with Eric Balanchunas, Greg Bell, and Canary Capital. Maybe you can help me out with his name.
Yes, Stephen with Canary Capital. Prior, he was the chief investment officer, I believe, at Valkyrie. So he has a lot of experience in the space. Started up Canary Capital, and has filed a few S1s already for ETFs, and one of those was HBAR. I believe Litecoin was another one. I think XRP was thrown in there as well. But yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah, and you obviously had that conversation. I mean, there was multiple things spoke about, but I think the kind of main theme of that was to do with a Hedera, a HBAR ETF. And going back to what we said at the start, Eric Balanchunas and James Seyfarth put out a piece that I think was published on Bloomberg Terminal, where they spoke about the progression of ETFs coming in 2025 and what they thought was likely. And of course, Litecoin was really the first one after you get your dual Bitcoin and ETF products. And then it was going to be HBAR. And I think a lot of people saw that and they, first of all, said, what the hell is HBAR? A lot of the people that would follow these accounts. And then secondly, it really wasn't on many people's bingo cards, perhaps including mine. I, up until that point, wouldn't have put HBAR as having an ETF before the likes of XRP and Solana. So maybe you can talk to us about that conversation, some of the things you uncovered. I also thought you did an amazing job at not selling to Eric Balanchunas, but helping him understand why Hedera, because one of the questions that he asked was, like, why? You know, you've got all these tokens. Why Hedera? You know, what's going on with this? Maybe we can get into that conversation that you had, and you can give us some of the highlights and takeaways of it.
Yeah, well, I was just as surprised as you. I didn't think for a second that HBAR would be before Solana, particularly, but also XRP and some others. I thought that Hedera would take a little bit longer. But, you know, when we saw the ETF get filed, the S1 in, I think, November, it certainly piqued my interest, but wasn't on my bingo card for 2025 to be in the order that Bloomberg Intelligence had put out, which, as you mentioned, was the next ones out will probably be a combination of Bitcoin and Ethereum. The one after that was Litecoin, and their rationale around Litecoin is it's just a fork of Bitcoin. So it should be considered a commodity, a little bit easier to get through. And then the one after that was HBAR, and then after that, Solana and XRP. And the reason they gave behind that was I already explained Litecoin or their idea around Litecoin, but HBAR hasn't been named in any suits, right? So even though it seems like XRP has, you know, pretty much won their suit, there's still some questions around that. Like when institutions invest in it, is it a security then? The token's not a security, but there's still some questions floating out there. So that could cause some delays. So don't shoot the messenger here. These people, as far as Bloomberg Intelligence, this is what they do. Eric, as you mentioned, he was the go-to guy last year. Of course, he covers the entire ETF space, but he was all about Bitcoin last year because it was the biggest launch that they saw in the ETF space. So this is what they do. So don't shoot the messenger. That's just what they're saying. They think HBAR is going to come first. They don't know what the volume might look like, things like that. I think that as the HBAR community, we should support it as much as possible because we want it to be a hit when it comes out. And there are benefits. I'm going a little bit off, but there are benefits to having an ETF instead of just holding the cryptocurrency itself. One of the things that I'm thinking about is options, because when you're holding the token itself, yes, you might be able to go out the risk curve and participate in DeFi, or you might be able to get staking yield or something like that. But if you're in an ETF wrapper, you have things like options, which is people may not understand, but even if you're just thinking about exiting at certain points, instead of just putting a sell order out there, you can sell an option or sell a call option and actually get income for that, even if it doesn't hit those numbers. So there's ways you can get just income from holding your HBAR bags anyway. Of course, there's going to be some fees associated with it, but it's another tool in the tool bag for the HBAR holders out there. And it exposes us to a completely new group of people who I think HBAR and Hedera will really resonate with. I'm talking about the Generation X, the boomers out there. Same thing that I was talking about, you know, with David Sachs out there, is they're going to look at the Hedera Governing Council, how professional they've been to this point, and then they're going to look at all these use cases and say, I see value here. And now they're not going to have to go out and figure out how to use Coinbase or set up a wallet or anything along those lines. They're just going to be able to go into their brokerage account and buy the ETF, which makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, me and Egon did a entire study on a very in-depth study. We actually published an article on it where we looked at the demographic of people within the cryptocurrency space, and the overwhelming majority, it was nearly 70% plus of people are 35 and under. And actually, the younger demographics were more so. The younger you get, the kind of more as a percentage they represented of the cryptocurrency space in terms of owning crypto. Now, the interesting thing with an ETF, and the beautiful thing is, and we still haven't really seen it with a Bitcoin ETF just yet, but we're seeing more and more of it, is actually with these kind of traditional products as it relates to markets that, of course, are going to be representing the likes of HBAR, you actually unlock that capital, or at least the potential for that capital to flow into those assets. And if you look at wealth distribution around demographic, the vast majority is with people 65 and older, and actually 70 and older, who are far more comfortable with these products, et cetera, et cetera. We're still, and this is the really exciting prospect as somebody like me and yourself looking at HBAR right now, is the masses, the real capital hasn't even been allowed to flow into this sector yet. And we're on the cusp of seeing that change. And I think that's monumental. I'm sure Eric had some things to say about that, along with Greg Bell, who's been very vocal on all of this.
Well, they're just passionate about it. Greg Bell, he's the main driver behind all this. I'm not sure exactly how all those conversations went down, but Greg has been pushing this pretty hard, and he's obviously been successful with it to this point. Now we just have to get it across the line. But that was the point that I was going to make, is not only is Hedera something that's going to resonate with these Generation X and boomers out there, but they have the most money. Like you said, that's where, when it comes to demographics, that's where the money is at. And put HBAR in wrappers like that is going to be invaluable. Now, of course, we already have ETFs in Europe, but the US is a completely different market. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about, hopefully, the opportunity that some options could afford around that. So I'm just excited. And the fact that we might see that, either in Q2, Q3 of this year, it can't be overstated, the impact that could have on the Hedera market. And I would actually suggest, people, hopefully there's going to be that's one of the other things we talked about, is all of the ETFs to this point have been cash create. So you can't just take your Bitcoin and say, okay, I'm going to take this 100 Bitcoin and I'm going to put it into this ETF. Give me the shares. That was one of the things that Gary kind of tweaked his nose to the ETFs out there. But with this new administration, that's another chain. We can have like for like. So you might be able to take your million HBAR, your 10 million HBAR, and put it directly into the ETF and then give you the shares. So I'm hoping for that. So I don't have to go through the trouble of selling my HBAR, getting the cash, which of course could be a taxable event or something like that, and then shifting that over to the ETF. If I can actually just take my HBAR and send it directly to Canary Capital and it ends up in my brokerage account in the form of an ETF, that's going to make things a lot easier.
Yeah, and I guess the real or one concern on the back end of all this is there going to be the demand? I think Bitcoin, of course, fastest growing ETF of all time. And if you look at just a segue here, the adoption of the crypto space is the fastest performing technology, obviously due to prior technologies ever. We reached 300 million users. I think it took us 12 years. It took the internet 15 years. It took mobile phones and kind of telecommunications 21 years. I think that's impressive on its own, but actually the more impressive thing is how impactful the internet and mobile phones are on our lives. Crypto is on a very similar trajectory in terms of its impactful nature. Something like HBAR is obviously, I think, going to be a major part of that. But I think one concern people have around the ETFs is what kind of demand are we going to see? Because these things can flop. I know JP Morgan actually released a report on Solana and XRP. And they said it was between sort of $5 and $10 trillion they expect, billion dollars, sorry, trillion. Let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet, that they were expecting within the first year. Was there any consensus in regards to demand that might come on the back end of this? Or was it very much just, we'll see what happens when it arrives?
Well, I think that's the job of people like Greg Bell, right? To make sure that there's some demand on the backside. HBAR holders in general, it's funny because they almost have to get out of their comfort zone to move over to an ETF. But I think it would make sense to take 10% of your holdings and shift it over to the ETF. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be able to do that with like for like, at least with the larger HBAR holders out there. But it's up to people like you and me as well to get the word out and make sure that people understand, because I do think it's going to resonate with the people that maybe didn't have the ability to get exposure before. And then besides that, it's going to be up to the people like Greg Bell to make sure that he's goosing his contacts in the traditional financial space to make sure that they get some interested in it as well.
And I think it's the perfect time to be launching an ETF, certainly given market conditions price is often the biggest driver of interest. In fact, I think it is the biggest driver of interest generally. You know, if you look at the amazing partnerships that we've had, or the amazing proof of concepts or governing council members that Hedera's had, it hasn't really had any bearing on price. These things take time to come to fruition, and value eventually does get realized. And we're talking about a whole utility cycle that's going to perhaps move us away from more speculative cycles. But we couldn't be
Well,
at,
that's
yeah, after you.
no. It just made me think of something. Is during the bear market, you have the prices down, but Hedera has to do something, and the HBAR has to do something that a lot of other tokens out there don't have to do, because Hedera is actually trying to build things, right? They're trying to come up with solutions, use cases. Those things are being supported through grants, the infrastructure that's being built. Now, if you're part of a network that isn't really building anything, you can focus completely on tokenomics, right? But if you're trying to build real things and real value, um, you're going to be spending, especially during the bear market, when you could focus more on that. Let the bull market worry about attracting capital, but we need to build real things. And I think that might be one of the reasons why we saw a lot more pressure than we would like to see. And we have these big announcements come out, and we don't see the potential impact that we might have before. But I think right now the idea is to attract as much capital into our ecosystem as possible, because money really does make the world go round, and we can then build all those real things if we attract more capital into our space.
Yeah, I think so. And again, when it's launching is perfect. I think you're going to see that demand naturally with a tide that rises all ships, with the kind of market conditions that we're facing at the moment. And I certainly think that's going to be amplified when the spotlight is on the cryptocurrency space, with some of what we may or may not see, and we can speculate on this in just a second, in 2025. 2025, I think, is set to be a big year for the crypto space generally, but certainly for Hedera. And I believe the kind of it taking its rightful place front and center in not just the US, but more globally, because of the kind of powerful nature of this distributed ledger. What was your kind of overall takeaway to finish off on the kind of ETF segment from that conversation? Was there one thing that you came away from and you thought, okay, this was the main I mean, there's multiple things I took away from that watching it myself, but was there one main thing, having that conversation with those individuals, that you took away from that? One thing sort of that stood out?
I'd say the main thing was, I asked Eric directly, what is the major barrier? What is something that could trip this up and prevent this from happening? And his answer was, I don't see anything. That again was kind of something that blew my mind. He's like, no, I think this is going to make it through. And again, this is the expert of the experts out there when it comes to ETFs. I think that was the thing that struck me the most. That he said, this is going to happen. It's a matter of time, not if.
Yeah, wow. It's exciting, and the world of possibilities really do open up. The kind of monetize and productization, I don't know, productization I don't think is a word, but you get where I'm going there, of Hedera, of HBAR, and all the amazing things it's doing. Crypto is increasingly finding itself as part of a portfolio. It makes sense to hold something that's a little bit outside the risk curve as a percent of your overall portfolio. We know banks, with the banking regulation SARB 121. I think what we're going to see, not to get ahead of ourselves, in the coming year or so, is just things that blow everybody's minds, like banks potentially custodying and holding Hedera. ETFs obviously going to do that. And the US is going to leverage those institutions, just like they've done with Bitcoin. The US ETFs for Bitcoin are the largest holders in the world. Is it too far out of the realms of possibilities? And we know that the New York Post released a piece where they spoke about how actually Trump is open to the idea of a Bitcoin strategic reserve, of course, but more broadly a crypto strategic reserve. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that whole. It's very much speculation for now, but it's interesting speculation that could become a reality.
With a focus on U.S. tokens once again, right? U.S. founded tokens. I don't think he just launched a meme coin,
Yeah.
Rupert. I don't think that a strategic reserve would be out of the realm of possibility here. Holding things like HBAR. I think it would only kind of makes sense. If you're going to go down that path of having a Bitcoin, you might as well, if it's an America first kind of thing, these American tokens, you might as well. But I think it makes sense from another standpoint as well. I think this is, alongside AI, is one of the most impactful technological revolutions that we're going to see. It's doing to value on the internet, what the internet did to communication. So to hold some of these assets, I actually think makes an awful lot of sense. So I do think it's certainly possible that it happens, but I don't think that we need that. That kind of narrative hanging out there is good, but I think we're going to have plenty of catalysts in the Hedera space when it comes to the HBAR, and those catalysts that might not have had an impact, like you were talking about before, the past couple years, they are probably going to have an impact now. So I'm talking about things like additional governing council members. So we are at 32 right now. We're going to 39. I know one of your friends, Rob Allen, has mentioned he thinks, and he does not say this lightly because he's been very careful about this in the past. He thinks that's going to happen this year. We're going to get those additional 7 council members before
Wow.
the end of the year. Who knows what those names are going to look like, and if they could be market moving, and how they're going to resonate with these new investors that we're going to be bringing into our space. And then there's things like the Nvidia, or already use cases that are established, right? Like SKUX with Mondelez, or NVIDIA and the Equity Lab thing that we were talking about, or transactional Internet of Things with SKUX. They just had another launch. They're going to have another launch here of these transactional Internet of Things satellites in April. But those use cases that have already been established, they could start to hit the network in a bigger way, or they could have big news that come out. They could drive things, and then we could have new use cases that come out that could move the market. Not to mention all these other things we're talking about. Other big investors that start to get interested in HBAR, or the ETF hits, or positive news around the ETF. There's so many, and that's what I get most excited about in the Hedera space. Is there's the potential for so many exciting things to happen, and I'm lucky enough to be able to cover them on a weekly basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's a true pleasure to sort of be involved in something like Hedera, certainly with everything going on, and that's the beautiful thing. That's why for me, Hedera is a far more obvious choice than many of its competitors out there. Pretty much all of them, I'll say. Uh, all of them, I'll say, not pretty much, because it's got its fingers in so many different pies. It's that tinderbox. There's so many catalysts that could ultimately see Hedera do exceptionally well, and I think that's something that very much excites me. AI. We've spoken about AI previously. There's just so many things that are going for Hedera right now. Whereas if you look at other projects out there, you'll tend to find that they might have one of these kind of partnerships that they just really play on. And I think the thing that we're getting at in regards to sort of market conditions is those things in a bear market kind of get swept under the rug. In a bull market, people are looking for reasons to be excited and bullish about something, and Hedera can give you a million and one. Do you have any comments on one thing I noticed and I do think about is the fact that Hedera actually gets ignored by a hell of a lot of the kind of talking heads out there when it comes to crypto, not to mention anybody in specific, but it really gets ignored. I think it's going to become harder and harder to ignore, certainly as it climbs up into the top 10 in regards to market cap. But many people out there ignore Hedera. Why do you think they're doing that? I've got my own suspicions. Maybe it's because they're invested in other projects, because we're all kind of quite tribalistic, I guess, in regards to our own
Yeah.
tribe. Why do you think they're doing this?
I think a big part of it is their bags, right? And that even comes down to crypto news outlets, things like that. They pay attention to their own bags first. But I've seen the earned media for Hedera popping up here and there from, they need to cover it as a crypto news outlet or a regular news outlet because it's what people want, right? And as we've moved from just a couple months ago, we were sitting at number 50 on the coin market cap list. We're down to 15, right?
That's
it
crazy.
gets harder it gets harder and harder to ignore. And these stories that are coming out around Hedera, they're just entertaining, right? And that's what a lot of this comes down to. We just had the news come out around PHPX, right, and the Digital Asset Alliance out of the Philippines. That's not a small story, right? A consortium of banks in a sovereign nation has decided to build a stable coin on a network, and it's Hedera, and they have a remittance market of $40 billion a year. This isn't small potatoes, and if that's the direction they're going, those remittances, which are most easily done on a network like this, that's why we're seeing so much success with stablecoins. Those remittances are going to be done on that stablecoin for the Filipino peso. So just stories like that you just want to dig into. Why are they doing it? Why is this group of banks working together with a expert in the Hedera field in FSCO to create this solution? And then all of these other stories that we can go on about forever. These are just news stories that are going to capture people's attention, especially once they've bought HBAR. And as we broaden the amount of people that bought, they're going to be, again, looking for reasons as to why they bought and maybe why they should buy some more.
Yeah, we're getting too big to ignore. I did notice, certainly on the Filipino stablecoin news, that actually originally, and I think we're seeing a bit of a theme here with, they had tried to do something somewhat similar or ran a pilot in a similar kind of department with some of the similar banks. They originally tried to do that on Ethereum. Now they're doing it on Hedera. There is still the Ethereum kind of version floating around, but it's very much switched to Hedera. This is a common theme, actually, that we're seeing in regards to projects building or looking to build and utilize crypto. They can't use Ethereum to do what they want to do, and Hedera is that obvious choice. When you look at, and we spoke to someone the other day, and I think I believe it, I think you believe it. There's no reason for Ethereum when it comes to the likes of Hedera. I truly, honestly believe that, because what you've got is a clearly better technology to do something like what they're trying to do in the Philippines over something that's got a bit more of a name, a bit more of a status, as a slightly more larger market cap that is just in every way inadequate in comparison with Hedera. I think we're seeing this theme. And I think with that news specifically, we saw loads of news articles covering it. And it's because we're getting too big to ignore now. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on stablecoins, Hedera more broadly. We've got the stablecoin suite. Lots of banks out there already looking to utilize.
Well, we've got a long way to go. Hedera, for a long time, we struggled as far as liquidity on the Hedera ecosystem. We only had between $6 and $9 million worth of USDC in particular. That's the main one that's used on the Hedera network. But we've jumped up over the past couple months from that about $9 million range to, I think, about $40 million. So it's going up fairly significantly. This is one thing that I'm not sure where Hedera is going to have the most success. Is it going to be these huge enterprises that have solutions, or is it going to be smaller startups that create solutions that end up creating a tremendous amount of success? I have a friend in the space. I don't know if you've seen him floating around, but Milan, he's our mad scientist in the space. He created something called Nomid, and it allows you through your phone to do direct payments at the point of sale. So similar to what you would do with a credit card or something like that. But what that allows is it's instant settlement, right? You don't have to worry about the, because a credit card, right? It's done on credit, right? You have to wait for that payment to actually go through. Of course, the payment seems like it's made right there, but it actually takes a couple days before it goes through. This is instant settlement, and it's being done for the cost of a USDC transaction, which is only a tenth of a cent. So you compare that to the 1.5 to 3.5% you're paying with a credit card. That should be it. That should be the end of the conversation, right? Because not only is the merchant saving that money, but they're passing the part of those savings on to the consumer. So, like, these kind of small innovations that are being made by these startups in our space, I think they have almost as much potential as some of these huge use cases that are coming from the enterprises. But I really don't care who wins. It really doesn't matter. I think somebody is going to be super successful. There's going to be many people that are very successful that are building on top of Hedera. I'm just curious as to which way it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think people often forget that. Hedera kind of positions itself as the enterprise distributed ledger, the distributed ledger for enterprises. But there's actually a lot of people like me and you out there that are actually building or looking to build on top of it to create that next idea, like YouTube or Facebook, or just like we saw entrepreneurs, people with ideas, creators leverage the internet as a technology. People can do that with this technology. Certainly Hedera, they are doing that. And actually, I think, again, to add to that kind of tinderbox scenario that Hedera is, it just takes one or two of them, not to mention all of the enterprises that are involved that are looking to build use cases. Of course, enterprises got on board with the internet. But oftentimes by that point, they'd given up share by people utilizing technology. And I think Hedera's got this really bright, really kind of expansive range of things that it's doing that ultimately is going to contribute to its success. And you mentioned something that's very interesting there. People don't understand the leap that Hedera has made just recently. It went from 50, thereabouts, it might even be a bit less, to what are we today? Are we 15th? Are we 14th?
15 is the last I saw. Um,
15th.
I, that
Yeah.
kind of trend is powerful, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's not just that. In terms of DeFi, at one point this year, going into November, we had it was 45 million locked in our DeFi ecosystem, and
Hmm.
today we're at over 200 million. So we've seen nearly a 4x in terms of the amount of money locked within our DeFi ecosystem, which is wherever you look at Hedera, the metrics speak volumes.
And it gets busier and busier, right? So because there's so much more volume taking place, I think it was getting upwards of, I think 600 million. It hit 600 million in December, but significant numbers, and that drives people to enter our DeFi space. So right now, I think the V1 on Saucer Swap for the HBAR and USDC pair was up at like 41%. So that's going to draw people into us. The more liquidity we can get, the better. But yeah, it's exciting.
It's very exciting. Wherever you look, it's very exciting. And that's, it was exciting before all of this US news and with Trump sort of winning. And it's only going to get more exciting. And that's what I want to come on to now is 2025. So this is the first time we've got you on this year, hopefully the first of many. But what are some of the things, you've touched on them a little bit. You spoke about Rob Allen's comments in regards to fulfilling the governing council this year. Now, how many governing council members did we put on last year? Was it 4?
Yeah, we only had four, I believe.
4. Okay.
Mondelez, BitGo. We had the Nairobi Stock
Yep. That
Exchange,
was the last one.
and there was one more.
Well,
Whatever.
yeah,
But yeah, no. So we had only a few last year, but it seems like we're going to turn up. I don't know. Maybe they're thinking, let's hold off for the bull market. But Rob seems pretty confident in this year.
pretty confident. So governing council members are always a great announcement. They're certainly very bullish. Certainly when you review some of the prior governing council announcements, oftentimes you'll read into those and you'll go, there's like Mondelez, for example. Everybody, certainly if you're in the UK, I know US, Mondelez are the people behind Ritz, behind Oreos, behind Cadbury's now, behind everything. And they're a Hedera governing council member that's looking to actively use this. The Nairobi Stock Exchange, massive announcement, fourth largest stock exchange in the whole of the continent of Africa. That's one thing you're looking forward to. Let's maybe go into some of the things that you're expecting or preempting, speculating on taking place this year that people should keep an eye out for. Governing council, we can start there, and then we can talk about some of the other things. Obviously, an ETF we've spoken about, so we can maybe put that to one side. Let's get into 2025 and what you're expecting.
Yeah, I think that, and you recently talked, I believe, to Tim Popwell with Scintilla. He was talking about how a lot of these entities have been building and working on use cases in the background. Not only do Hedera announcements specifically get pushed under the rug from a Hedera and HBAR perspective during the bear market, but that happens for everybody else that's building as well. If you're building something on Hedera and nobody knows what HBAR and Hedera is, then it's not going to get as much attention if you launch in the beginning of 2024 compared to the beginning of 2025, and gosh knows what it's going to look like a little bit later this year. You're going to get a lot more excitement when everyone knows what Hedera is and everybody knows what HBAR is. So I think there's going to be that driving factor behind some of the use cases possibly getting announced. And it sounds like Scintilla, who is helping all kinds of entities tokenize things on top of Hedera. They seem like they have a lot of announcements. One of the other things that's being built on us is Karate Combat, and they're talking about how they have a lot of big announcements coming up. And we can certainly talk about Karate Combat. I'm a huge fan of that one as well. But really innovative stuff like that. So I think that not only has Hedera held off potentially on making some big announcements and waiting until the right time, which of course it looks like now and through 2025 is going to be the right time. But I think that those builders on top of Hedera have kind of been waiting as well, because this is going to be a time that is going to be beneficial for them to announce as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Karate Combat because I still think people are really underestimating the fact that Karate Combat literally launched a token on Hedera. It's not just a token, it's far more than that. I do want to, and I'm not doing this to clown anyone or throw any shade. I remember there was a tweet that was put out by Ran. Ran's a very prominent figure in the cryptocurrency space, and it said something along the lines of, I've never seen anybody building anything on Hedera. And then there's a picture of him at Karate Combat with the Hedera logo perfectly slap bang in the middle. Let's explore some of your passion for Karate Combat because I think Karate Combat's going to explode. It already is on Twitter, or X as it's now known. Just a few months ago, there was over 1 million people viewing one stream. And you just think, this is
Live.
this is
Live.
broadcasting major event level viewership.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Karate Combat and why you're so bullish on that whole. Are you a karate holder? Maybe
So
you can give us some insight there.
yes,
Okay.
I'm a significant karate holder. I put cash into it. I put a fair amount of HBAR into it. HBAR is by far my biggest holding still, but I did put a fair amount into the karate token. The karate token has struggled. It has not gone up very much, despite how much success they've seen in their business. And they have seen, like you said, a tremendous amount of success. And they have a fair amount of revenue. They have revenue from sponsors and the local tourism agencies of places that they go, all that kind of stuff. They're thriving as a business. Their sport, their league is doing a fantastic job. I feel about the karate token, and none of this is financial advice, of course, but I feel the same way about the karate token that I felt about HBAR, we'll say 3 or 4 months ago when it was sitting at 4 cents,
Wow.
or back in the beginning of 2020. Yeah, 2020, I think, when HBAR was a penny. Like, people just don't realize this yet. Now, I think there is a good explanation why their token has struggled. They dissolved ownership. There is no owners of Karate Combat. There is no equity. There is only the token. Now, the token doesn't represent ownership, but it's the only thing there is. And that's where I believe the value from the expanding league is going to flow to. And they've put on some tremendous shows. Right now, where the token is, the karate token, I believe it's only worth about $50 million. I think they're the number two as far as viewership, the number two striking league, fighting league out there behind only UFC. UFC is worth about $15 billion. So you see the difference there, and especially a hype cycle around crypto, how exciting it could get. And the token it's not just for show. Like, you've seen other things where a cryptocurrency might, sponsor something, but there's really no ties there. The karate token is integral to the karate combat strategy. They have this up only gaming, which they've built into their tokenomics for a certain amount of time to you pick whichever fighters you think are going to win in these cards. And if they win, you get more tokens. If you lose, you don't lose anything. That's built into the tokenomics. But because they have revenue, I think they can get token revenue, karate revenue, where they can make that sustainable over time. So when you see a business that's going to survive, regardless, it's kind of that time in the market beats timing the market thing. If they're going to survive, they're going to have success at some point. But I think because a lot of those original equity holders got tokens, that's instant liquidity. It's a lot harder when you have a private company like that to liquidate your position than it is once you have a token. When you have a token, you can liquidate your position whenever you want. And I think that enticed some of these people to sell. I actually don't think when it comes to the token, they understood what they had. They're experts in karate combat, running a league, and they really weren't experts in the token. I think they might have learned their lesson here, but again, eventually, I think it's just going to take off. It really is lightning in a bottle. I've never participated in a sport where I was interested in it. I knew that they had a great new sport, but I didn't realize until I played with some skin in the game how much more exciting it could be. I've never been a big gambler or anything like that, but I bought some karate and I started placing them on the fighters, and it took the entertainment value of that sport to a whole new level. So I think it's a really good opportunity. They actually, let me see here. So this might be airing later in the week. It might be past. If there's any way we could get this out on Wednesday, it would be awesome, because that snapshot is going to be Wednesday evening. The next event is going to be Friday. So you're going to be able to, if you did get karate tokens right now, you could participate in up only gaming on Friday and realize what I'm talking about. It is insane. And the number of participants in up only gaming has gone straight vertical, right? So they started, there was only 1,500 people for the first event. A few months later, it was like 11,000 and 30,000. It's up to 225,000,
Wow.
right, that actively participated in up only gaming the last time that they had an event. That's a lot in the crypto space for a single event to participate like that. And 99% of those tokens are the Hedera version. The way to, they do have an Ethereum version just to get that liquidity, but the way to do it is through the app with the Hedera version. So I know I've gone on a little bit of a rant there, but I do think that's probably one of the best opportunities right now in the crypto space.
No, do you know, I'm really glad that you did, because I think what this highlights is independent builders leveraging Hedera, and, 250,000 last time. If you look at all dApps that are built within the entire cryptocurrency space, including Ethereum, I can think of maybe one or two, maybe just one that even gets close to that. And actually, the vast, vast majority of dApps have under 20,000 active users. So what
How
you
crazy is
have,
that?
I'm really glad you went on that, because, again, another clear example of something that's being built with Hedera, that is ultimately benefiting karate, benefiting the entire ecosystem, benefiting the world. And I think we saw a similar thing with SealQ as a stock.
Mm-hmm.
Their stock did unbelievable things. Now, of course, there was the announcement from WiseKey with SealQ, and of course SpaceX.
And it just went straight down, right?
Absolutely. And now look at what's sort of happening with it. It's seen through maybe Hedera's involvement, a real resurgence. People can
Mm-hmm.
revive, just like Michael Saylor revived his dead company from 2000 after the dot-com crash. It was literally a dead company. And then it got
Mm-hmm.
that first heartbeat, and that was through leveraging this technology. People are going to do that with Hedera in a big, big way. And of course, the whole SpaceX thing is still a real topic of conversation. That's now shipped, right? Was it the 4th? It wasn't the 14th. I can't remember the date. Was it the 12th? Something like that. Or it could have been the 14th, actually, that shipped.
What, the launch?
Yes, of the satellites.
Yes, yes, that happened just last week. But there's going to be another launch of, I guess,
Wow.
satellites that are even more dialed in for those transactional Internet of Things. I have to get some more information from Carlos. I've interviewed him a couple times, but unbelievable. And I know I've probably said this on your show before, but he says, of course, we want to onboard the next billion users into the DLT and the crypto space, but he wants to onboard the next trillion objects. And they just had success actually in the UK, in your neighborhood. They had smart meters for homes, right? For electrical, for metering. And it already has Hedera technology right in there. It's going to be
Wow.
ready for when they want to flip on the switch. I think 26 million meters are expected to go out for that. And whenever they flip that switch and they want to start to do the transactions using a Hedera token, they're going to be able to do that.
Wow, we have to dive into that in more detail. That's the first time I'm hearing it. That's why we love having you on the show, Brandon, because there's just myself speaking to you, I learn a hell of a lot every time you're on here. And that's something we should absolutely look into. People stumbling across Hedera for the first time. I hope this and Brandon's channel is really where you go, because what you can see from start to finish here is just how exciting of an ecosystem this is. All the fingers that are in all the different pies that Hedera has. And it really is a tinderbox. It's only going to take a spark to ignite this whole thing. That flip to be switched with some of these, and then it's just a snowballing effect at a great time from a market point of view. We've spoken about Karate Combat. Because you're just such a wealth of knowledge, Brandon, there's lots of people that might be looking around the sort of Hedera space right now. Karate Combat, you mentioned Source Swap. What projects right now building on Hedera, perhaps more retail driven, more
Uh-huh.
DeFi driven and things like this, what projects would you direct people to go and check out, just have a look at, do some research
To,
into?
to go and use, so number one, of course, Karate Combat. You can actually get the app, and if you want to get those karate tokens, you can do it directly through the app. So that'd be the number one. I would go check out Steam Runner from Earthlings. So they have their Steam token. That's another one, and you can just play that game right now. They're going to have 3 or 4 of those mini sidekick games on a regular basis. per year, and then they're going to have a big gaming metaverse as well, and that team knows how to execute. So that's another one I would check out. There's some social media like engagement ones. So the Mouth is one of them. Another one's HBARC, and you can participate with HBARC directly on X. All you have to do is be on X. So definitely, and to get some of these tokens, Saucer Swap. So number one, you want to go get your wallet. I would go suggest getting a Hashpack wallet. I would actually, when you create it, I would create it the traditional way. I wouldn't use the email creation if you're going to be storing a fair amount of value on there. But get your hash pack. Go check out the Saucer Swap. Take a look at some of these tokens. I'm trying to think of some of the other tokens that I would go and get right now. Oh, so if you're into NFTs, I would check out Centex. They have a token as well. That's our secondary marketplace for NFTs. For launching NFTs, I would check out Kabila. They have a token as well, and they are creating a whole new world of engagement through those NFTs. Galaxy is another one, so that's a social media platform. Think a lot like X, but more for like creators to be able to monetize what they're creating. So that's another one to definitely go check out. And I had another one that was in the back of my mind, and I'm going to feel really bad when I don't mention it. But there are so many great projects that are building on Hedera out there that I'd like to talk about. But yeah, check out those first, and then the next time I come around, I'll give you another list.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, go and play around with Hedera. And one thing you'll find very quickly, certainly if you're used to, I remember giving my accountants my books a couple of years ago, and my accountant literally turned out round to me and she said, "Wait, you paid this much money to do something on this network?" And she was just dumbfounded. She's like, "Okay, Rupert, I'm not going to tell you what you should do with your money, but this seems like a bit of a waste of money to be even playing around." And she knows nothing about crypto. From a logical point of view, using some of these other networks is a horrific experience. Go and use Hedera and you'll go, wow, you can have
Well,
what?
here's another one.
Absolutely far away.
Well, I've got to talk about Twigital, right?
Of course.
So my company is Twigital, and you can check out on my channel, and maybe we can throw it up here. It creates from almost any physical object. It creates an NFT and a 3D rendering of that as the top asset. And we did that at Karate Combat. We took one of the fighters' gloves, one of the ones that won the fight, and we Twigitized it right there live in the center of the pit. It works really well. That's another app you can get right now. There's no token associated with it, but go and play around with it. Go ahead and try to tokenize some things on the Hedera network, and you'll not only see how quick Hedera works, but you'll see that there's true innovation being attracted to this space. Hedera attracts a certain type of builder, and there are people that really know how to innovate. We talked about Nomad, we talked about Galaxy, Karate Combat, Twigital. You can just go down the line. It attracts these builders that have some really innovative ideas.
Yeah, and I want to make that point as well. If you're an entrepreneur right now, you've got an amazing opportunity in front of you with this new technology. You might have an idea that you can't quite fulfill for whatever reason. Maybe distributed ledger technology can help you do that. You can right now leverage this technology to become one of tomorrow's billionaires if you have the right idea. And ultimately, Hedera might be the home of that. Certainly, it makes sense from a cost and efficiency point of view. Of course, it's the most green block distributed ledger that there is. From a speed point of view, from a finality point of view, from a partnership and other builders and community point of view. You've got an amazing community here. So right now, guys, go and check out Hedera. If you've got a use case or an idea, now's the time to bring it, certainly with all the amazing things that are coming this year. The last thing really for me to do, Brandon, is just thank you. It's always such a pleasure to have you on. We could go on for hours and hours and go on all different tangents about any one of the subjects that we've spoken about. But what I love about having you on is you really help deliver just a jam-packed episode each and every time that you can't listen to or watch or me speaking to you come away from without going, wow, Hedera is the place to be. So thank you very much, Brandon. It's always an absolute pleasure.
It's my pleasure. I love coming on and talking about this stuff. And every single time I come on, I get more comfortable with it, and we can just go down these rabbit holes and have an absolute blast.
Guys, stay tuned for more episodes with me and Brandon. On that note, we're going to love and leave you all. Brandon, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you all in the next one.